Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our, if I can find what I'm looking for, I'll be doing real well. Oh, there it is. Welcome to our seventh and final session of HCD715 Change Leadership. Yeah, we are almost there. So, what's on the agenda for tonight? Of course, we know what's on the agenda tonight. We have the change model case study presentations. Tonight we have Heather and Kimberly, and you see what their agendas are. Uh, McKinsey's sevens and Galpin's nine wedge. I wonder if these two know each other. Makes you wonder. And then then I'm going to do a lightning, well, maybe not lightning fast, but a core summary for you guys because we have the time, and it's always good to do a summary and a conclusion. Or conclusion, I think, will be the wrap up. So there you have it. Any questions before we proceed? So formal. Oh, okay. So who's on first? Is it Heather or Kimberly?
I'm gonna go
Since
first,
I don't
Doctor.
have oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna go first, Doctor K, and I can share my screen too if that's okay.
Is that okay? Of course it's okay. It'll be a first for me, but it'll be a good first. So I appreciate that. And so I will stop sharing. I have stopped sharing. So we should start seeing your stuff.
Okay, let me see here. I think it's screen two. Okay, are y'all able to see everything? Okay.
From paper-based to database,
Okay. Yay.
all the way. Yay. Good deal. All right. Uh, as soon as you're ready, you may proceed.
Okay. All right. So, uh, obviously, my name's Kimberly Jefferson, and I'm going to present the issues that I faced in my change effort, which involves leading the laboratory that I currently work for away from a paper-based system to a data-based system that we call the LIMS. Okay. And the LIMS is an acronym that stands for Laboratory Information Management System. And the name pretty much says it all. It's exactly that. It manages all the information from for the laboratory. Everything from the sample IDs, anything that the customers send that's attached to the sample, any information like the time it was collected, and all the way to the results, the tests we run on it, and how much it costs. So it's a lot of information that goes into it. And I just want to sort of describe the lab that I work in. It's actually an internal lab. So we are a part of a larger manufacturing company. So we're not actually separated from that. All under the same company. We're just an offshoot that's just involved with testing for quality of the products, if that makes sense. So our laboratory is segregated into different departments. There's a micro lab, a chemistry lab, serology lab, and we also do some environmental testing as well. So we have all that data and all that information we have to manage. Okay. And so I work at our corporate site. Okay. So we also have laboratories in 3 other states as well. Okay. So we have to manage all of that information. And then we also contract out third parties to conduct testing for us as well. So any information we get back from that third party lab, we have to manage that as well. Okay. So that's a lot of information. And when I came to work for the company, I assumed that they would already have a electronic database system already in place to manage all of that. Also, it's a growing company, so they add new manufacturing plants every, let's say, 5 to 6 years. So, you know, my thinking, okay, you're a profitable company, you should have something, but that wasn't the case. I actually came to that position because I worked at a different lab prior to coming to my current job, and we developed a limb system. So we started with sort of a skeleton version of a limbs, and we customized it and programmed it to fit the business that we were in at the time, which was a global company. Okay, so I remember writing schemes and having to translate into different languages. So it was a big ordeal what I came from. So when I came to the company I work for now, I'm thinking, it's a lot smaller scale. It's not a global company. So I felt as if, I could do it, So and pretty much when I received the position, I came in as a what they call a management trainee. And the relationship between me and my coworkers and the people that I was leading this change initiative with, it was sort of more of a consultant to client styled relationship, even though I was a official, employee of the company. It was sort of weird. They brought me in for the purpose of getting us off the paper-based system onto the LIM system. Okay, and prior to my coming there, they had already purchased a LIMS and they had it for 2 years and no one did anything with it. When they first purchased the LIMS, they sent a few of the team leads to night classes at a local junior college, and they took classes on Microsoft Access databases to train them on how to use it and what to do. And when they came away from that training, it just sat. I mean, nothing happened for 2 years until I came on board. And so um, it was a unique situation. I was thinking, you spend all this money, surely you want to use the system. And what is broken about your process as to why y'all are not using it? And so when I came in, I was totally optimistic. I was like, this is easy. This is a system that's already created. It's ready to go. It just needs somebody to teach, learn how to use it, and then teach the users, and then implement everything onto the new system, and boom, go. And as I think about it after taking this class, I can see why these models exist, because you think that you can just boom jump in and go, and you end up tearing up a whole lot of stuff. What could have been an easy process ends up being totally just raggedy. And what I'm about to explain to y'all will see what I'm talking about. So what was on our play, or what was on my play? What did I step into? I'm gonna start with get my mouse over here. The ambiguity of authority and leadership scope. Okay, so what I mean when I say this is I came in as a trainee, a management trainee. Now, within my organization, that could mean a lot of different things. They have management trainees that are running departments. And then they have management trainees that could be described as like glorified interns. Okay. So I really going into it, the laboratory, they weren't really, I guess, used to getting management trainees on that side of the business. So we were all kind of trying to figure out. They were trying to figure out who I was, and I was trying to figure out who I was to them, and at the same time trying to push forward this initiative. So, and let me the cherry on top of all this is the management trainee program that I was in is a 2-year program. You have 2 years to make an impression and get hired on into a permanent position, or you could risk losing the job and being out on the street. So I was under pressure to really get this moving so that I could, you know, solidify a permanent position with this company. Okay, and just some other things that were on the plate. This heirloom and fatally ambitious employees, I want to describe, this was the best way I could describe what I was dealing with. Okay, so an heirloom employee, in my definition of it, is an employee that has been there for so long. They're like an heirloom. They are valuable. Okay, they know everything, they know everybody, they know every process, but they are stuck in their ways and they don't want to change. Okay, they are content with the status quo. They don't want to go any further. and they shy away from you if you're, especially technologically based changes. They're not with it. And then the fatally, so that was one group of people that I had to work with. And the other group was the fatally ambitious employee. Okay. A fatally ambitious employee is a nice way to say a snake in the grass. And what I mean by that, these are people who have their own agendas. And as long as you stay out of their way, y'all are cool. But in the event you get in the way of their agenda, they will they will undercut you, they will undermine you, and they will make your life horrible. Okay. And so, which that segues into this next, the toxic social climate. And this was something that was so difficult because when I first received the position, I was so happy because I felt like it was sort of a family environment and I thought everybody was cool, and I was happy to be there and they acted like they were happy to have me. But like I said, um they there was this little talk like, I wonder if she make more money than me, or I wonder what they have planned for her, and is it gonna get in my way type thing. And we would have painful meetings, okay, about this change effort because we the focus was not even on the effort, it was on derailing my derailing my whole plan to get us moving. And it was not good. And I want to make y'all mad, so I'm going to just tell you some of the stuff that I went through. Some of the stuff that was said was, you're too bullheaded to run this project because and I'm like the most easygoing person ever, okay? But they told me, you're bullheaded, you're never gonna grow, you're never gonna get this off the ground because nobody's gonna use it. And I'm like, okay. And I heard things like, oh, I bet your husband hates you because you are just hard to deal with. And they would attack me on personal levels. And I cried many tears and I was just angry. But like I said, I was under pressure because I had 2 years to get this thing moving. So another few other things that were on my plate, no plan. So when I came in, there was no plan. It was just, we have this limbs and we need to use it. I need to justify why we spent all these thousands of dollars. Okay. And then bold competitors. We had third-party laboratories that were performing work for us in different other areas, in different other laboratories. And they would make a pitch to say, hey, we could do what y'all are doing for cheaper. We give a faster turnaround time. And I think y'all just need to close down. I'm like, are you really doing, threatening my job in front of me? They didn't care. I mean, they were bold. And but what they were saying, it was valid. And if you were to be a good steward over, your resources, I mean, you have to entertain what they were talking about, especially if we couldn't make the improvements that we needed to make, in which the limbs would have been instrumental. Okay. So hopefully, y'all are feeling sort of how you can get a glimpse of how I felt being in that situation. So the model I chose was Galpin's 9 wedge model, which is this one. And I know one of the objectives of this project was to why did I choose this model? What is it about this model that I liked? And to be honest, I was looking for something, uh, for lack of a better word, for me to use as a weapon against people like I just described. I felt like the reason this project didn't go smoother is because of the people. I couldn't get them to just have good attitudes and help me to help them. And I mean, this model, the first step, establish the need to change. I'm looking for Galpin to tell me how to deal with difficult people, how to make them do what I want them to do. And establishing the need to change, I mean, that wasn't what I was looking for, but it's and this model reminds you a lot of Cotter. Cotter talks about establishing a sense of urgency, in his first one, and then he talks a lot about vision. Galpin's second step is develop and disseminate a vision of change, which is reminiscent of Cotter's third step. I believe his was the vision. But and then the third, diagnose, analyze the current situation. The fourth one, generate recommendations. And so the third one here, what he's saying is basically do sort of a gap analysis. Determine what you need to put, what are you missing? What are the missing links to be able to push this change initiative through? And then once you find those gaps on the fourth one, you want to sort of come up with like a soft strategy on how to fill in those gaps. And then detailed recommendations. These are, and I know that 4 and 5 are sort of similar. I had to kind of dig in deep to figure out what he was really talking about. But on the detailed recommendations, he's saying, you need to be specific about what it is that you need to do. And I'm going to give y'all an example of if I could go back and do this all over, what I would do. But pilot test recommendations, and that's sort of like your beta test, and when you're dealing with software. So this is when you put all of the recommendations into play to try to figure out, if it works, and if it doesn't, you're making a list of things that you need to follow up on and improve and fix. And then prepare recommendations for rollout. And this is where you would basically go and reconcile everything all the things that didn't go well with the pilot test. And then once you've fixed everything and fine-tuned everything, then you would do a rollout. And then number 9, measure, reinforce, and refine changes. And I view number 9 as sort of a continuous improvement type step. You're constantly, perpetually on step 9 to make sure you're taking an assessment. How is the system performing? What do we need to strengthen, and what do we need to refine? And so, like I said, we've made it through this whole model, and when I made it through this whole model, I didn't see what I was looking for. What I wanted to hear him say was, you need to do these steps to get those heirloom and fatally ambitious employees to get in line. That's what I was looking for, and I didn't find it. And I was disappointed at the end of this model until I got to the toolkit. So in his book, Galpin's book, he outlines, the model and how to go about it. And then you get to a part where it talks about a toolkit. And I read this. I'm going to read this to y'all. It says, which leadership attributes will you work on during the change process to improve your skill in leading change? And when I read that, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I realized I'm looking at them when I should look at me and figure out what it is about me that I need to be improving on so that I could be a better influence on them. Why am I letting them bog me down from progress? And then the second, I'm gonna read the second. He says, how often will you work on the attributes you identified in number 33? And I couldn't answer that question in the state of mind that I had, because I wasn't focused. I didn't spend any time working on me. I spent the majority of my time in defense mode. So and so that's when I started to sort of appreciate Galpin's model, because he doesn't put the petty stuff in the model because it doesn't belong in the model. I mean, he needs for us to work that out and fine tune all that pretty much really before we even start to pursue the models. So it's a very, like Dr. K says, the aha moment. This was an aha moment for me. I really appreciated just being confronted with that information. And so if I could do it all over again, I would let's see here. So this would be my plan. If I could do it all over again, I would work on me, work on Kim, and make sure I stay focused on the goal. And I have this motto: you have to, if us achieving this change initiative with implementing the limbs will help both of us, I can look over you and push all that, bad blood to the side and focus on creating a system that we could both benefit from. With me focusing on my behavior and me staying, focused on the goal, then over time, I believe that will work. I believe when they see that I'm relentless and I'm not gonna get sucked into that sort of that culture and that passive aggressive fighting, that they'll get on board eventually as well. And I know that's the truth, because after it was all said and done, me and these people are really close. Well, I won't say close, but we have a healthier relationship now that it's all over, and they got a chance to get used to me and I get used to them. But anyway, so the plan, the first one, establish a need like we outlined. And so what I would want to do is make them disgusted with what they have. And I'm just going to describe what they have. When a sample comes in, for example, in the chemistry lab, they would take a cup, because they are on a paper-based system. They would take a cup up the sample. They would take a Sharpie and write the sample number, which is just a number that they keep in a book, a notebook. They write the number and they just, give each sample that comes in the next sequential number. So just, and when I came to work there, they were like on 600 and something thousand, number 600 and something thousand or something like that, or 6 million. I don't remember the number, but, and then they would get a rubber stamp and they would stamp the paperwork with the receive date. God forbid you lose the rubber stamp. That would just cause all kind of chaos, because then they're like, well, now we have to write down the receive date on the paperwork. Okay, well, if you had a limbs, then you wouldn't have to do that. You could just scan it. But and then they had this beloved book that, if you make a mistake and misnumber a sample, it would throw off every sample that you ran with the wrong number, and you would have to go track down every test that was performed on that sample and fix the number, and track down the invoice and all these other things and fix them. And it was a nightmare. Okay. Whereas if this was a database system, a few clicks and the error is solved. So that's what I would highlight. I would want to make them disgusted with what they have, even if that meant us traveling to one of the third-party labs and doing sort of an audit and letting them go in and see how a lab is supposed to run, and just sort of get them to see that, hey, this is not a want. This is something we need to do. We are severely behind. And then the second, develop and disseminate the vision. And I like how Galpin, how he sets up this particular step. He talks a lot about team building. And so that's what the way I would approach this. I would build a vision team. And our lab is small enough such that we could rotate the meetings with different people, a fresh set of people, until we get the vision that we want. That way everybody would have a hand in the vision. And basically, I want it offsite, provide lunch or dinner or something. And we all sit around and talk about what the goals are. And then that way it becomes sort of everybody's baby and not just my baby. It's everybody's, something everybody has an interest in. And then once we get that, market it. Sales and marketing, I guess, are good attributes to have when you're trying to get people to buy into a vision. It's the more they see it and the more they hear, it's almost like propaganda. The more you push it on them, it's in their head, and they're constantly confronted with, what we're trying to do, the changes that we're trying to make. And then number 3, diagnose the current situations. So I would go in with like a cost saving analysis. How much time and cost could we save if we move towards a LIMS system and left the paper-based system? How many more samples could we do with that freed up time? And it's and let's see, the 4th step, generate recommendations, which is basically a soft sketch of the responses to the gap assessment. So this is basically, what are the things we could do to close these gaps? Do we need to get IT involved? Does our version of Microsoft, is that going to be compatible with the version of the limbs? And do we need to upgrade all the computers before we move forward? And then once we have a list of recommendations, then we proceed to step 5, which is customize them, the recommendations, put them into place, and build up the system such that when you're ready to pilot test, everything's already ready to go. And this would be sort of the beta test phase, because we do some programming in order to customize it. For example, our testing equipment, we automate so that once the machine finishes running the sample, it's programmed to automatically go from the instrument to the database, and then from the database to like maybe an intranet site, so that the right people can get the results, quicker, faster when they need it. So this is just checking all of those uh, end user points to make sure the system is following along, what we're designing it to do. And then another thing with the pilot test I thought was a good idea. And if I ever do anything like this again, I will use it. But incentivize bug finding. So a lot of times, like when you introduce a new software, software has bugs. Some certain things are not going to work like you designed it to work. And sometimes when people encounter that, they get frustrated and they say, I don't want to use this, and they complain and no, this system doesn't work. And I thought about maybe we could incentivize people finding bugs. So if you find a bug, you get a reward. So in other words, they see bug finding as more of an opportunity rather than something to complain about. And so preparing for rollout, step 7, is basically everything that you found from the pilot test, you reconcile it. And you make sure that everything's good to go. Make any necessary improvements in either the workflow of using the limbs, updates to procedures may need to do, or with the instructions, making them more clear, such that all employees they find it user friendly. And then the rollout, you want to that's pretty. And what I found with rollouts, is better to do it in like a stepwise fashion. So maybe the first week I would roll out maybe one customer and one sample type, and assuming nothing breaks, because remember, this is all connected to billing too. And when you bring in Oracle and systems like that, if it's not just right, then the back office will be screaming and somebody's in trouble. So that's why I like to do, and I guess you could probably put that in the pilot test step as well. But so anyway, once you get everything rolled out, then the last step is measuring and reinforcing and refining, which, like I said earlier, is a perpetual process. I don't know if he meant it to be. I've read some authors complain about this model, and they say that it's not complete, um, because it doesn't give you an opportunity to start from step 1 and go through step 9. But I feel like you can make this model fit what you need it to do. And that's the way I would handle it. Is I would uh, make number 9 be the driver of continuous improvement within my organization. And so that's what I would do. And like I said earlier, I am happy to have learned this. I think that if I would have had a model such as this, or Cotter's, or some of the other ones, and been in, I know Cotter doesn't like the word empower, but being empowered with this information, um, it could have been a lot less damage along the way from driving this change. The good news is we did get on the limbs, and the good news is also that uh they don't remember. I talked a lot to the people that were there when we implemented it, and a lot of them don't remember the old way now. They don't. And when they think about all the handwriting on samples we used on the sample cups and the book, I mean, they all say, we needed this. And so it's about endurance, enduring through all of that to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so that's all I have. Thank you so much. And I will accept questions at this time. Oh, and here's my references page.
Hi, Kimberly. It's Sandra.
Hey, Sandra.
You walked into a major change initiative. They brought you in to do what you did. Let me ask you something. What was your leadership style during that change? And what did it transition to after?
Well, I would say my leadership style was very much diminished. I come from companies, like I said, the global companies I work for. You were there today and gone tomorrow. You were just a number. They didn't. It was so many employees that it was just like, okay, and so everybody had this rat race sort of mentality. Right. And so it was sort of like, the hammer down kind of leadership style. Like, I expect this and this needs to happen, and if it doesn't, then you get written up.
Yeah.
Well, when I moved to the organization that I'm currently at, I mean, you literally cannot get fired. Like,
wow.
Like, you literally, I mean, it's one of those, it took a lot of getting used to. Like, we have people that have done some things, and I'm like, really? Like, y'all allow this? And so, yeah, and so one thing I didn't mention in the presentation that I wanted to acknowledge, what I had to do was I had to operate under the clout of the director. Okay. And basically it goes back to the I think her name was Dr. McDonald. I asked her, she was talking about Paul Revere, and I asked her, what if you need to tell everybody, the British are coming, but you're not Paul Revere? And she said, you need to use Paul Revere's name. And I didn't like that answer. I just want people to just do what I need them to do, but that's essentially what I did. I invited the director, the laboratory director, to every meeting when I saw that we weren't making any progress and it was just getting, like I said earlier, raggedy. I invited the director to every meeting, and I pretty much, like I said, operated under her clout.
Right.
So she sort of, qualified me. Yeah.
That was smart. Thank you. You did an excellent job. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Julie has a question.
Yes.
Oh, hi, Julie.
Hi. Yeah, your graphics were fantastic, like always, your presentation. But and I think what you said about incentivizing to find the bugs, I think that's a good way to get the people that always complain to do what they're good at, right? Finding things wrong with something, right?
Right.
And I think that was a really important point. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't know. I don't think it was Dr. McDonald. I think it was the person who had before her that because I actually, when I wrote my response to the discussion, I talked about her answer to you, because I think that when you use other people's names as like it kind of makes it look like you have less authenticity or authority, right? Like,
right.
You have to use their name. And so I'm interested to understand how you felt like that worked. Was it just because she was there?
Well, yeah, and I guess it depends on what group of people you're working with. The group of people I was working with, they were strong in their negativity. Like, they were on another level. It was really ridiculous, And when it's to that point, I think that it would have been a lot messier if I would have just, pushed my way and said, hey, and cause a big, which, I mean, some people would do that, and I wouldn't knock them for it, but that's just not the way, because I was a little bit afraid that she wouldn't have my back if I made it too messy. I felt like she had more, because like I said, these people were working there for 25, 30 years, and they don't just let people go. So if I would have put my foot down and said it's either their way or my way, I felt like I probably would have been the one to
go.
So I really don't.
But how do you build influence if you use her? Because that was kind of your question when we had the
Right.
speaker, right? Like, how, if you have no influence, how do you become influential if you use somebody else?
Right. And what I found is because I was so new, like I literally, to them, I came off the street and I'm a trainee. I don't even have a real title yet. Now what ended up happening was, first of all, I'm a praying woman. I prayed every day, okay? And what ended up happening was, at the end of my 2 years, she created a position for me that I never had. So now I'm a manager now at the lab, and I manage all of them, the ones that are out of state as well. So over time, now I can make those,
Okay.
requests, and they're on it. I mean, and I serve them. I'm in a posture of a servant, and they
Right.
respond really well to that. I want to make sure everybody is good. Are you good? What can I do? And
Mhm.
over time, that rapport, they know I respect them, and so now they respect me. And that's totally, it's not intuitive to go about it that way.
Mhm.
But that's the way I did, and it worked for me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's good. I'm glad you brought that up because I always wondered, like, how you thought about that. So that's good. Thank you.
thank you.
Ooh, come on. We got time for at least one more.
Hi, Kim.
Hey, Jamil.
I was saying, hold on. I think Jamar, sweet.
Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. Love your presentation. I love the plate diagram. I love your definition of the heirloom employees because we all have those ones who have been there for so long. And you have, like, they know everyone, they have all the information to the point where they probably have all the guidelines memorized to the T. But I didn't necessarily have a question, but I just wanted to comment on that. Awesome job. And way to stick up for yourself. And I know it's hard sometimes when people come at you and you have to self-reflect and see, like, is it me? Like, what's going on? But I think you handled the situation great and wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Kimberly, I was just going to ask you, like, given your situation and how you have now progressed in your organization, have you seen that happen to another person coming in, training, like the way they did you, and how would you like defend that person or help that person to give them information to see how they can get through it?
Absolutely. I usually, so since I'm formally, management, I have a conversation with everybody that comes through there, and I tell them things that I wish someone would have told me. The first thing is, whatever you say can and will be used against you. Don't go in anywhere telling people your business, because not that you don't want that you're not people don't handle your business, and you think that they're sort of I guess for you, and they're really not. And so I always tell them, and I say, you can take the advice or leave it. I'll let you make up your own minds about, what you encounter back there, but stay focused. And if you have any problems, come to me. And they have come, and they have cried, and and I tell them, hey, you should listen. I've been there, I've done that. So I think it will get better as some of those, I hate to call them bad apples. I really do hate to call them that. But as they move on, hopefully we can, regenerate the culture there to where it's not like that. Um, so yeah.
All righty. Great job.
Thanks, Dr. K.
Got my rubber stamp out. Taking care of business.
No.
Yep. Anything but the rubber stamp. I know. Great presentation. Great story. Almost a tragic ending, apparently. Yeah, change is fun. It really is. Not for the faint of heart. Okay, so let's do this. Let's take a break until 10 till the hour. So that's about what 7 minutes, I guess. I'm getting generous in the last session. So let's go ahead and do that. And when we regroup, Heather will be up. See you soon. All right, we're back. I think we're back. Yeah, we're back. We're as back as we need to be, I think. Right? Hello, hello, hello.
We're back.
All right, there's life out there. Good to hear. Good to hear. All right, all right. So Heather, you
Sir,
about ready to roll?
I'm about as ready as I'm going to be.
All righty. So here we go. Start anytime.
Alrighty. So when we were talking about change management, when talking about change leadership, I was really focused on a change that threw us for a loop when COVID happened. A little bit of background: when COVID occurred, I was working for a community college in the adult education department. The adult education department is a fantastic department, but things were very outdated from a technological standpoint. Everything was completely paper based. And I would ask the question all the time, isn't there a better way to do this to where we're not killing trees and we're not, cutting our fingers up on these bar things that we have to have in these folders, to have to put in these boxes, to be able to go pull it out if we need to audit somebody's file. And so when COVID happened, we ended up having to force a change to where we went digitally. When we went digitally, there were a lot of challenges that we faced that I think that had we gone digital, or at least 50% maybe digital, previously, then it wouldn't have been such a hard time for us whenever we went digital during COVID. But a little bit of background on the community college: we are not, or the adult education program, excuse me, is not an accredited class. And so even though we're teaching on the campus, we're not accredited class. So we weren't utilizing the Canvas system. We weren't using the technology that we had available to us, because the mindset was always, if it's not broke, why fix it? And people are very attached to their paper. And I understand that, because I am one of those people that I love my books to be real books. I love my office supplies. I love all of that. But when you look at the way things were set up, it was much more efficient to go digital. And that's what we ended up finding out at the end, once we went through this whole process. The way that we are set up is that we had to have 10 students per class, and they had to sign in on the paper book. They had certain objectives that they had to meet. We had to teach certain objectives, but there were no requirements as far as students having to be there every day. We tried to enforce that, but of course, we wanted to help them, and sometimes things happen. So we were very, very flexible in our attendance policies. So sometimes we were having to go back and reteach different things that we might have already went over with other students in the class. In order for us to get our funding, we had to have that certain number of students there for a certain amount of time. With it being paper-based, and with there being certain objectives that they had to meet in order to pass my portion of it, which my portion was Smart Start, and I guess I should have started with that. But Smart Start is basically Adulting 101. So we would have financial literacy, we had resume writing, we had interviewing, we had all of those basic soft skills that they needed to learn in order to be successful when they went into their academic studies to take their high school equivalency or to take their GED. They had to do certain things in certain steps, and we had to do resumes, and we had to do budgets and that kind of stuff. And then we would put it in their folder, and then it would get filed in the big box that we would have to go and get. When COVID happened, though, we were forced to go home to work remotely, and there were a lot of different barriers that we had to overcome. Some of those barriers included the fact that our students may not have home computers, they may not have home phones that they could use to do their work on. Some other barriers we had were employees who were not technologically savvy enough to be able to just jump into using the shells for Canvas that we were given from the Mississippi Community College Board We had some people that didn't have internet access that was very reliable at their house. And so during COVID, we tried a couple of different things. Basically, what it came down to is that the Mississippi Community College Board had the objectives, and they had the credentialing, or they still have the credentialing criteria for the classes, and what the students have to pass in order to be able to move on to the next step in the adult ed. They have that in a Canvas shell, but again, because we weren't accredited program, we didn't really use it that much. The thing about the objectives is that in the Canvas shell, the way that it's set up is that there are many different ways that students can meet these objectives. And it was very much dependent on the instructor as far as how we were going to meet those objectives for the students, whatever tended to work best for us. So when COVID happened, and we got with our IT department, and we got our Mississippi adult education program on the Canvas platform, to say that it was challenging would be an understatement. There were links that were broken. There were 3 or 4 different assignments for each objective. And so we weren't sure if we had to do each assignment or how this was going to work. It was just a very open forum. There was a lot of different information out there. There was just a mismatch of information and court and assignments, and students were trying to log in and they couldn't log in, or they didn't have access. In the end, it ended up working out very well. But had I been in a different position than what I was in the beginning, when I started working for the college, I would have tried to push this a little bit harder, so that way we wouldn't have had those challenges that we had during COVID. And the strategy that I tended to gravitate towards as I looked at this was McKinsey's 7S framework. The 7 S's stand for structure, system, style, staff, skills, strategy, and shared values. And I'll go into those in more detail in just a second. But I think that had we looked at it through a different lens, had we looked at it through a different a different thought process, then we could have saved a lot of heartache, a lot of frustration on both the student side and on the instructor side. But again, hindsight's 2020. So when we're looking at the McKinsey 7S framework, in the middle, we have our shared values. And that's really where we want to start. And when we're thinking about this process, we're talking about which of our principles are helping us and why are we doing what we're doing. Well, we're doing what we're doing because we have our students, and because we want to help them be gainfully employed. We want them to be self-sufficient. So we really need to focus everything that we're doing on our students and how we're going to help them achieve that. When we're looking at our values, why do we do what we do? Why are we, what are our principles? It really kind of goes back to what is the degree of importance that we're coming at this from. And we all wholeheartedly believe that our students were vitally important, not only to our program and us having jobs, but also for the betterment of our economy, for our communities. So shared values is in the middle. And then when we look at the structures around it, we have 6 others. The ones on top, the strategy, the structure, and the systems that you see are the hard S's. This is the ones that they deem less tangible. They're influenced by your company culture. And then the ones on the bottom, skills, staff, and style, are, the ones on the bottom are the less tangible ones. The ones on top, the hard S's, the strategy, structure, and systems, are going to be the ones that are management influenced. These are the ones that are measurable. So when we start looking at how we're going to change this process, how are we going to fix this Canvas shell issue and our students not being able to access it, and our instructors who are just frustrated with the entire system? Like I said, we start with our shared values. After that, whenever we're looking at what is the next step? Everything basically revolves around those shared values. And we have to decide, are they consistent with our structure, our strategy, and our systems? And if not, we need to change that. So the next one that we're going to talk about is going to be our structure. So how is our company or our team divided? Well, we were divided out geographically, which actually worked out pretty well because we were able to divide our students amongst each other. And so instead of just having my 10 students or my 20 students that I would have per day, we were able to kind of tag team some of the other students that might have been having issues, or we were able to connect with them a little bit more. Maybe they weren't able to get in touch with their instructor. When we aligned ourselves in that way and we started focusing on what our strengths were, we noticed that our structure started to really kind of solidify a little bit more. The next part of our system was that we were looking at our strategies. So when we're talking about our strategies, what do we intend to achieve, and how are we going to deal with this pressure? When we're talking about strategy, again, this is one of the hard S's. What do we do to solve the problem that we have? And with the problem that we had, the main problem that we had is that the Canvas shell was so mismatched, and there was so much, information. There were links that were broken, and it was just a big dump of information, basically. So we ended up having to align it, even though each instructor had their own ability to be able to meet the objectives the best way that they saw fit. There had to be some sort of structure that we had there. We had to be on the same page with this information. And so that was the next thing that we did. The next one was going to be our systems. When we're looking at our systems and we're looking at our staff who were so paper-based for so long and weren't used to using the computers to teach this information, that was one aspect of this this component that we're talking about. But the other component was our students, and a lot of our students didn't have the computers at home. They didn't have phones at home that they were able to use, and so they were just as lost as we were in some aspects. So not only did we have to learn our systems, but we had to learn our systems in a way to where we could explain those systems to our students. We had to teach them how to log in. We had to teach them how to navigate through those programs. After that, we're going to look at some of the harder elements. We're going to look at, are they supporting each other? Are we able to communicate effectively the way that we need to in order to meet those goals and meet those elements? Let's see. When we look at our soft S's, like I said, shared values is a soft S. Those are the ones that are the less tangible. But we also look at our skills, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit. We had some instructors that were better skilled at at technology than others were. We were trying to teach. We were trying to not only teach how to build a budget, but also how to log into your computer and to log into Canvas. So we really had to lean on each other whenever we were going through this process. When we look at style, the styles, what type of leadership and cultural qualities are going to help us achieve our strategic goal? And luckily, our leadership was very much on board with doing whatever it is that we needed to do in order to make this work. They had a very servant leadership style, which was great. It was, okay, let's try this. This doesn't work. Let's go to the next obstacle. Let's try this. And so they were just as flexible as we were, and we were expecting our students to be, which worked out really well. When we look at our staff, how should we help each other manage in our growth? That came with, where are our strengths and where are we growing, and where are we able to build those strengths, maybe through teaching each other, maybe through taking a course, maybe through just learning. So there were a lot of different aspects coming into play with this Canvas shell implementation, if you will. Let's see. Also, when we're looking at staff, we're looking at, we're kind of doing that gap analysis, kind of like what Kim was talking about in her presentation. What are there certain aspects? Are we going to change it up to where certain instructors are going to teach certain components of the course, so that way they can be more fluid in it, they can be more functional in it? Are we going to divide it out to where each instructor ends up teaching all of their courses? Those were all of the questions that we were kind of having to deal with, while we were also trying to answer questions from our students. So again, if it were me, again, going back, hindsight is 2020, I would have liked to have been able to implement this course into Canvas shells sooner. What we did towards the end of the my time there is that I ended up taking all of the Canvas shells that we had, and I compiled them into one Canvas shell. I went through and I arranged them in the modules. I locked them to where students could not advance further than what they were able to do at that point, because at one point they were bouncing around back and forth, and so our instructors were trying to keep up with them, bouncing around, going from one lesson to the other lesson and then going back and forth. I also set it up to where their tests, they were only able to take them twice, because we had a lot of students that were trying to skip around so much and then trying to look up different answers. And so the integrity of the program was questioned at that point. When it comes to our attendance, because our funding is all attendance based, and we had to have at least 10 students in each class signing in, this was another aspect that we had to change, because when we were in Canvas, it would show how long they were in Canvas. It didn't show how long they worked on certain days. And so we couldn't say definitively they were there for 2 hours this day and 2 hours that day. So that was a process that our administration and our leadership had to work out to be able to justify those hours, because they had to be with me for a certain amount of hours before they could move into their academic programs. The other aspect of this too was the barriers that we had to face with our students. Again, I kind of mentioned before, some of our students didn't have computers. They didn't have phones that they could use. They would use their data. So what our college did is we ended up setting up Wi-Fi stations in all of our college campuses. They could come and they could use the Wi-Fi stations on their phones. If you've worked in Canvas before, you know that Canvas isn't really ideal for phones, but it was still better than nothing. They could work on their iPads and they could work on their computers. And then we also partnered with all the local libraries in our community to be able to hand out those passwords, so they could go and sit in their cars and be on the computers that way if they didn't feel comfortable going into the libraries while they were locked down. This also brought up a topic of being able to loan out computers and loan out assets that we had that we previously didn't do. Pre-COVID, before all of this happened, students would have to come in, they could use our desktops, they could use our laptops, but we weren't loaning those out. So during this process, while we're trying to kind of get our roots about us and get this solidified, this course, so that we can provide the best service to our students, we were also trying to figure out how we could provide them with those assets. And so what it ended up doing is it ended up kind of morphing into a loanership program where they can sign out the computers or they can sign out the assets. And then there are certain accountability factors that go into play with those computers and those assets, because again, with us not being an accredited course, our students could leave and we would never see them again, and we would not have a way to really get in touch with them if they changed their phone number or whatnot. So we had to keep up with those. So in the end, it ended up working out really, really well. We ended up being able to come together and use the structures that we had. We upgraded the systems that we had. Our styles, we adjusted and we growth. And so it was a lot of personal growth. And again, Kimberly, I'm going to go back to your presentation with your heirloom employees that were there, and they were kind of stuck in their ways for a while and they didn't want to be on the computers. They actually did a beautiful job of opening up and getting through those humps and those barriers to be able to improve their style and be able to improve their abilities. Our staff did great things as far as adaptability. Again, our skills increased. So not only were we better instructors in adult education overall, but we were able to help our students in those areas that we may not have been able to do previously. We may not have been able to navigate through Canvas because we never really had to use it before. And not only does that help us, but that helps our students, because once they graduate and they go into accredited classes, they're going to be in Canvas. So they're already familiar with it. They're already comfortable with it. And they can kind of navigate those issues. So instead of being already nervous about going into classes because, they have their GED, maybe it's been a little while since they've been in classes, that's one thing that they can kind of put to the side and say, I don't have to worry about. So it was great to be able to provide them with that. With the strategy, we ended up keeping it on Canvas, and we are going to we're in a hybrid program right now where students can come in and have in-person lectures and instructions and paper-based work if they prefer that. But we also have it to where they can do their Canvas work at home. So if they're helping their kids with their homework, or if they're not able to get to class for whatever reason, then they do have that option. And of course, our shared values, it goes back to why are we doing this and why are we putting in all the work? And it again goes back to our students. And so it was difficult. It was hard. There were definitely things that I would have changed about it had I had been in the position to be able to do that. But in the end, it ended up working out really, really well. So that is pretty much all I have on the presentation. Yeah, I apologize. I know it was a little short, but are there any questions? I'll be happy to answer, or anything that maybe I need to go into more detail on.
Oh, I know you got questions.
Well, I have something to say. Heather, I thought when you made this part was really caught me, that you said the group that you were in, everybody grew from the change experience, from the change effort. And I thought that was excellent in terms of the students, because that flows down to them, because being in those programs, I've orchestrated a lot of training and development work for my church, for the homeless, for people who don't have jobs. And I have gone over to technical colleges and colleges to meet with people, so that the people that I'm sending there, they can feel comfortable. And I think what you guys did was fantastic, in the way that you did it. You set it up so in the Canvas shell, they couldn't get ahead of themselves. And the instructors, they knew what to do, but also it benefited the students because they could move on from there and go in confidence, knowing what they had already learned.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was great.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite things about this whole fiasco during this process, is that we had a lot of students that would come in and their computer literacy skills would be, very, very poor because they've never had to use them before.
Yeah.
And so it was intimidating already for them to, number one, walk into a classroom.
Yeah.
And number two, to get on a computer and not know how to use it and feel like they were being judged, or, whatever the case was, because we would have some students that came in and they were 17, 18 years old, and they were just all over the place with the computers. In the classroom, when it was paper-based before COVID, it was very structured in the way that we did it, and we could spend one-on-one time with our students. If they'd missed something, we would teach for a part of the time, and then we would go back. And so it was a lot of bouncing back and forth for us. But that was one of the things that, our students would verbalize whenever they would come in, oh, I'm afraid of that computer, or I don't know how to use the computer, or I don't know. And so I spent a lot of time with my students, especially when we did resume writing or when we would go into career exploration, trying to work with them on the computers just to get them familiar with it. So that way, when they did go into their academic programs, they already kind of had that behind them. Some of our instructors were able to dedicate more time to that because they had more time to do it or more resources. But when we went to COVID, when COVID happened and we didn't have a choice but to do it, what we noticed is that our students, they had that learning curve, and a lot, some of them were a little bit resistant to the computers and to learning that technology. But once they did that, their comprehension and their engagement in the class just grew because
Wow.
it was another confidence builder for them.
Yeah. Well, see, that's where I'm going, because a lot of people don't understand what's actually going on in some of these homes, and especially when you're trying to deal with people who don't already feel, they just don't feel good about themselves already. And to make a major step on a college campus, that's major for them.
Oh, it's
Major.
huge.
It
Yeah,
is huge.
especially, and some of my students, unfortunately, they've had people their whole lives tell them that they weren't going to be able to do it.
Yep.
And so adding that technology component to it, even if it's in a hybrid, in a hybrid format right now, it adds that extra layer of, okay, I can do this. And it's those small steps that add up to the big steps.
Yeah.
But also with our instructors, our instructors were, a lot in the same boat, because we've never had to use Canvas before. We never had to teach this material and meet these objectives from a computer-based way or a hybrid way. It was always in in person. It was always on paper. It was always, students in seats, not on the computer. And so for us, there was a huge growth, there as well, because we didn't have a choice. And I know that when we're talking about pressure, and when you talk about, where's that breaking point, and everybody has a different breaking point for pressure. I think that us being able to look at the skills that we had, to look at our styles, to look at our staff, and kind of, it's kind of like the ADDIE system, where you don't just stop at one point. You're constantly going back and evaluating back and forth. We were able to grow and become more confident in ourselves, which I think showed with our students, because they were able to see, okay, this is something that they're having to go through. Because I'll tell you, I had students and I was like, y'all are just going to have to hold on one second because I'm trying to figure this out, So, it kind of showed a little bit of humility and a little bit of humbleness on our part as well.
I love what you guys did. That was excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I just wanted to mention that I think that is a big part of what you are just talking about, because even my second graders, the fact that they know that I go home and I got class tonight, or I have an assignment to do, it makes them feel like they're not alone. And I think that is a huge part of supporting the learning environment. So great job. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a second grader, and it's funny to see her talk about her teachers, and we see them in Walmart, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, they shop in Walmart too." So yeah, absolutely. When you can add that human element to it, and when you can add that, I'm just as lost as you are, but we're going to figure it out together, element to it, it kind of gives them that extra drive to do it too, because it shows that they can figure it out as well. Thank you.
We can take one more. Going. Okay, I'll take it. Yeah. How's that? So, let me camera on here. Oh, great job. Well presented. You covered all the content bases, and really, I really like the way the questioning went there. So here's what I'm imagining. You have a demographic that's pretty wide, as far as age groups, right?
Correct.
What, like 17 to 50 or more, probably.
17 to, I think the oldest one that I had come in, she was 72.
Oh, Lord. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have that. You have your instructors that have, they've never really done this before. I mean, think about it. I mean, that's pretty hard. And we had a lot of folks at the university that were dealing with that kind of thing. Now, not our group, because we've been doing online and blended forever. And
Right.
so we're, it's old hat to us. But to someone that's never done it before, I know my wife is in grade school. She teaches first graders, and just watching that painful transition to doing online synchronous courses for people who weren't used to it was painful. It's painful for me to watch, but everybody it seems got through it. And especially with that age group, that the little ones really need to be in the classroom. So it's been difficult. So how did you even think to go to Canvas shells? Where did that concept come from?
Mississippi Community College Board has always had the content in the Canvas shell. When I accepted the position and I was basically thrown in sink or swim, that was one of the questions I asked. Isn't there a better way that we could do this other than just having everything on paper and having people come in and sign in? Because I would have students that would come in, they wouldn't have gas money, or they didn't have, a way to get into class. And it was always, well, this is the way that we've done it. This is the easiest way. This is what we know. And so when COVID happened, it really kind of opened that up. It opened up that conversation. We didn't really have a choice at that point. And so the Canvas shells at Mississippi Community College Board sitting down, and I forgot to mention this whenever I was going through my lecture. When they sent them, we were on their Canvas. And so any changes that we made to our shell, every other
Sorry.
adult instructor, oh, you're fine. Affected every other adult instructor's Canvas shells, because there was one Canvas shell. We didn't each have our own individual ones. And so that was part of the problem, because we would have people in North Mississippi who wanted to use, this information for budgets or financial literacy. And then we had people in South Mississippi who wanted to use this, information that was in the shell. And so we weren't able to hide stuff. We weren't able to edit it. We weren't able to really do anything to it except teach from it. And so when we had students who were coming in and they were logging into these Canvas shells through Mississippi Community College Board's Canvas platform that they had, I was having to instruct them, okay, so go to financial literacy, go to budgets, go down 3 little notches. Do you see that? And it was so painful, but we weren't able to do anything in that moment. And so luckily our leadership, our director and all of them, they advocated for us. And so they gave us each our own shells, which was beautiful, except the shells that they gave us were the exact same ones that they had. And so each instructor was trying to go through, and not only did we not know how to navigate Canvas from an instructor's side, we didn't really know how to navigate Canvas from a student side unless you had already been in Canvas. And luckily I had been taking classes, so I could tell from a student side what worked and what didn't. So we had instructors who were trying to organize the content that they had in this Canvas shell, and they were locking students out and this, that, and the other. So basically what I did is I took 3 days. It was during one of the long weekends that we shut everybody's Canvas shells down. I went through and I had formatted it. I had asked them, what lessons do you guys want? We need to get this, to where it's concise and we have it consistent, again, because if you're sick and I'm having to talk to your students, I need to know what you're teaching, what you're, where they're at. And so I just got it all set up straight. And then I did it was about a day's worth of training with all of the instructors, and we opened all of our Canvas shells, and we walked through it as an instructor, and then we also walked through it as a student on the other side of that, so we could see with the students. And then I showed them how they could edit it if they wanted to, which made it a lot easier because that was their own individual shell at that point. They weren't changing my shell because they wanted to do this or that. And so, like I said, it had we had done that in the beginning, at least to have some sort of an idea of what we had accessibility to and what we could have possibly been doing would have been great. But it didn't happen that way, but we still made it work. And now that the hybrid program is working out really well. Good.
And again, great job. Both presentations tonight were outstanding, as I've come to expect from this group. And that's the last of them. So I'm going to miss you guys doing that. You probably won't miss it all that much, but it's okay. That's okay. Obviously, you learned a lot. You got a hold of some good models, and were able to apply in your case studies those models towards hopefully a more effective change. So good leadership all the way around. Let's go ahead and take about 5 minutes, and when we come back, we'll do a course wrap up. Okay. Love the bow tie. It's a nice. I've always fancied myself wearing those, but I've never had the guts to do it. It takes a strong person to wear those things. I'm telling you.
Well, I found I was rotating through the same 7 or 8 ties, and I've got this little stack of bow ties over in the corner that my little girl likes to. When she finds them, she picks them up. So I thought, I'll put it on this morning and kind of change it up a little bit. Some mornings I'm too tired to get it tied the right way, and I just don't want to fool with them. So.
No, you tie your own, do you?
Yeah. So I had
Man,
to YouTube it. YouTube had to show me how, because I couldn't get it based off the instructions that come with them.
Yeah, see, if I were buying bow ties, I'd be probably buying them the same way that I buy regular ties, where they've got like a strap around the back. You just clip it on and go, right?
Hey, I won't judge. I had a best friend I worked with at the college that every year at graduation I had to tie his tie, and so one year he just kind of pulled it down just enough to kind of loop it over his head, and he hung it on the back of his office door, and that's how he wore it that way for 10 years. So
nice. Yeah, I did that once. I don't know if I wore the same thing for 10 years, but hey, whatever works.
Yeah.
All right. I'm assuming we have returned. I'm not even asking. I'm just going to take it for granted. So let's see. Where am I? All right. Welcome back, everyone, or at least most everyone. We're going to go ahead and do our do a course summary here. It's been quite a semester. Lots of things that we've had to do. Let's see, I'm on camera. Well, I'll try not to stand up or leave and get coffee while I'm doing this. So that's always a good thing. Okay, so let us begin. All right, so you have to start at the beginning. The beginning for us is that there's a real need for change leadership in our organizations, and it's not just what we know from our own painful experiences, and we've certainly had them. I think Kenneth, during the last presentation, Heather's presentation, I think you made a note to that effect. And it's true. We all have the same kinds of things. It's like a sink or swim situation. It has to be done. Why is that? Well, it's because that's the environment we live in. Remember, we talked about that VUCA environment. With the volatility and the uncertainty, the chaos, and the ambiguity, the whole thing is just insane. So, but the research bears that out, and I do have all my citations at the bottom there, so hopefully you can see them. Anyway, so it's really a strategically critical organizational capability. It doesn't matter who you ask, but the researchers say the same thing. Today's organizations need to learn how to do it, and it doesn't matter the size of the organization. Unfortunately, the research also seems to suggest that half to 70% of all change efforts fail. They just don't work out. I think by now we all know what some of those reasons are. But the goal of our course of this course was to help you recognize and prepare for the challenges, techniques, burdens, and successes of initiating and implementing major change within organizations. Objectives are pretty straightforward. Articulate, disseminate, analyze, synthesize information regarding organizational change to others through dialogue and critique. Describe and conceptually apply steps involved in effectively leading organizational change. Identify, analyze, and interpret behaviors that lead to successful change initiatives. Identify the types and significance of various drivers of organizational change. Identify the types and significance of barriers. Prepare a change case study using specific steps for the successful implementation of a change process. How did we get there? Coursework, of course. You had a lot of reading, but it was all good reading. Comstock, Cotter, Passmore, and Patterson et al. gave you some insights and some different approaches and thought processes. One thing we do get out of all that reading is that Change for Humans really hasn't, except for the speed and the volume of it, really hasn't, we haven't changed. People haven't changed all that much. And there's certain things that remain fairly constant, like having to deal with emotions and those sorts of things, being organized, having a plan. We had 7 synchronous online sessions where you made great presentations towards our learning more about different models and how you would approach using those models against specific problems. Our discussion boards, we had 3 great guest speakers and a Make Change Easy article also that you commented on and discussed to see what do real people do with change, besides me, what are these, what are people that we can not only identify with, but are successful at it, doing, that we can learn from. There was our HBR, Harvard Business Review case study, welcome aboard, but don't change a thing, which gave us some additional insights. And your change model course case study presentations and your papers. And finally, your personal change anything challenge. We looked at some definitions of change. Between change and personal change, change is something that we experience as an event, something that happens to us, whereas personal change is something that we want to do for ourselves. So here it's a matter of the point of decision. Did it come from me or did it come from someone else? And it makes a difference in how we react to those types of changes. We talked about transitions, or that inner psychological process that people go through as they internalize and come to terms with new situations. And we talked about those stages, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and all those feelings, and the realization that people, especially in a organization when you have many people going through the same change at the same time, are not going through these stages necessarily together. You may have some people jump to acceptance and other people remain in denial and anger for quite some time. And we have to deal with that. That's part of leading people. It's that internal process, like grieving, that has stages. Change management, methods, manners in which a company describes and implements change within both its internal and external processes. As Cotter says, that's what we do now. Is a lot of change management. We have processes, we have plans, we have workflows, and those sorts of things that we apply. And we've been doing that for quite some time. But also, it's not to say that it's a bad thing. It's very necessary, especially if you want to be successful with a complex change. But there's also the notion of change leadership, which, coupled with change management, it kind of deals with the people side of this thing. It's the ability to influence and inspire actions in others, respond with vision and agility during periods of growth, disruption or uncertainty to bring about the needed change. It's about bringing your peeps along with you. We had 3 great guest speakers, as I mentioned: Paige Roberts, Janae McDonald, John Bentley. And your insights on their presentations, and it always amazes me how consistent they are, but our classes are from point to point. We understand things about, you got to communicate. You got to be able to pivot, to change your plan. And sometimes it's easier to help someone along to be successful outside of your organization than perhaps to maintain them within. It's also about dealing with those emotions that folks have and helping them work through the changes that you're having to implement. So good on you there. Your change model case studies. Look at all the models we looked at. Galpin, McKinsey, Cotter's 8-stage model, Worley and Alber's Mormon's Engage and Learn model, ASTD change model, Carnell's change management, Passmore, Connor's 8 stages of commitment, and the ADKAR model. So good job on those. and great applications to your problems. I'm really looking forward to reading your case study papers. We also had some content that we delivered while we were in our courses. In between presentations, we talked about SWITCH, or the AE3, very simple 3-part change framework where we deal with a rider or rational selves, the planners in ourselves, the planners in others. You know, it applies either way. You can do it to a group. You can do it with help other people through change, help yourself through change. We talked about the elephant, the doer, the emotional selves, the in our psyche, and also the path. What kind of environment are we in? How can we shape that environment to make ourselves successful? Again, directing the rider, instruct the rider where to go and how to get there, eliminate all ambiguity. This is our Mr. Spock, right? So we need to have the facts and need to know what to do. Left without that, the rider will definitely spin his or her wheels. Motivate the elephant, appeal to the elephant's emotions. The elephant needs to feel the journey is possible, make progress, and celebrate the small victories along the way. Again, share emotion, but here we're talking about a 500-pound elephant with a 150-pound rider on top. Who do you think's going to win? So it's very important to deal with that. Deal with those emotions, and of course shape the path, make it as easy and as possible for the rider and the elephant to be successful along the way. Tweak that environment, things that motivate the elephant, things that celebrate small wins along the way, those kinds of things. You also did your 6 Influences Personal Change Challenge. We had personal motivation and ability, social motivation and ability, and structural motivation and ability. Influencers that either work for you or work against you in your efforts to make your personal changes. I am very much looking also forward to reading your Personal Change Challenge and see how you did with those. You clarified some measurable results, things you wanted to do. You found some vital behaviors or a few behaviors that lead to the greatest emotional change or the greatest amount of change, successful change, and then of course you enabled and motivated yourself to make those things happen, and I know you've learned from the experience. Looking forward to those. We also talked a little bit about transformational leadership. That's been probably one of the most researched leadership topics and has shown great potential for navigating large-scale strategic changes. So it is relevant, very relevant to our discussions. The greater and more complex the change, the larger the enterprise and the more people involved, the greater the need for transformational leadership at every level. It's not just a matter of being a leader at the top, but it's all the leadership things that people do that influence others along the way at every level that makes a difference. And then, of course, it is a philosophy and a set of skills that can be learned, very important point, can be learned and developed over time. So you may not feel that you have all those skills mastered at this point, but it's something that you can practice and do something with and get better at as you go along. You do that. Identify strengths and weaknesses of your team members. Find out where they're at so you can meet them where they're at and help them along with changes. Help develop them, coach them, mentor them. Develop an inspiring motivational vision for the future. Many of you demonstrated that very thing in your presentations. So, this is something, that you cannot underestimate. Cotter presses this also in his writings. People have to have something to believe in, that it's going to be better, that kind of thing. Motivate each individual to get them to buy into that vision. A little coaching, a little mentoring along the way, and also to incentivize the progress that people make. It's very important. Manage and involve yourself in the delivery of the vision. You have to be present and you have to be involved. It's your vision, right? people will not recognize it unless you're there with it. And then continue to develop stronger relationships with your team members. That means being seen, getting around, having conversations, getting to know your people, building trust. We also talked a little bit about emotional intelligence. And again, this is very, very relevant to our discussion about change leadership. It is the bedrock of transformational and change leadership. And leaders, research bears out that leaders who underestimate their emotional intelligence are they're likely to fail due to their inability to move followers, to deal with their emotions, and to satisfy customers, to deal with their emotions. Again, same kind of thing. Emotional intelligence, not only their followers' emotions, but their own, because how you show up is going to have an impact on the outcome. Emotional intelligence can be developed. Again, like transformational leadership, can be developed and improved by learning and practicing new skills for success in the workplace. How do we do that? 5 strategies: self-awareness. Simple questions you can ask yourself. How am I feeling? Oh, I am really angry. And why am I feeling that way? And sometimes you have to stop, take a pause, take a breath to think about why you're feeling that way so you can get to the root of it. This becomes very important, especially in your interactions with others. Emotional control, which brings us to emotional control. How am I being perceived? How do I want to be perceived? How am I showing up? How do I want to show up? And how do I get there from here? So a lot of this is, do I want to be calm, cool, collected, reasonable as far as how I'm dealing and interacting with other people, or do I want to be an angry, raving lunatic screaming at them because they didn't do what I wanted them to do? Then you think through that as well. Let's see, what do you think the outcome will be? If I lead by fear all the time, I may be successful with that some of the time, at least when I'm present, but probably not most of the time. Certainly not for long change, long positive impacts on change and in your leadership and on followership in your organization. Self-motivation. Again, focus on the goals. What are our goals? My goals, our organization's goals, my people's goals. We kind of have to talk to them to figure out what that is, but that's an important part as well. Where's the common ground? Finding common ground is finding out, well, who are the players? What's at risk? What are they afraid of losing? That kind of thing, because it's important. And then working it out. How do we get there together? How do we get the goals of the organization met, get your goals met at the same time, or at least get your concerns dealt with so that you can move forward with this? I think Paige Roberts talked about this in some detail. It's about communicating. It's about building trust. How are you feeling? Not self-awareness is how I'm feeling, but how are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? What do you need to move forward? And also, how can I help you with that? As a leader, that's what you do. You find out where people are, and you meet them, and you talk with them, and you help dispel their anxieties and their concerns, and also try to win them along to your cause, to your vision. And then relationship skills. So what I hear you saying is, again, it's about active listening, conversation, talking to people, listening to what they have to say. Often it means repeating it back to them in your own words so that they know they were heard. It's it's critical actually to them knowing that you heard them and cared enough to hear them, and that builds trust. Again, we're talking about transitions along with our changes, moving from present endings to new beginnings. And this is very important to realize that no matter who you are in an organization, the more changes that you have, the more complex that those changes are, the more of these things you're going to have going on at the same time. And it could turn to be critical in your efforts to make positive change, especially if you have several changes going on simultaneously with great complexity. And as you were saying earlier tonight, you had those old diehards. They're always going to be there. They're not going anywhere. and they're more difficult and a little slower to move. Some are even downright heirloom, yes, resistant, hostile almost. And then you'll have other people that are way on the other extreme. They're wanting to make change, but sometimes do it in ways that are not as productive as they could be. And then you have some folks that kind of are in the middle, but on that end of recommitting, where they're happy about the change, they're willing to help with it, and everything in between, all going on at one time. And it's up to you as a leader, as a change leader, to meet people where they're at, help them along. So that is my very fast summary for our time together in the course. Didn't cover every single thing that we talked about, or certainly not every single thing that we did. You did a tremendous amount of work, and I think from everything I've seen of that work, you've been very, very successful in making this transition through the course, and I'm very, very happy and grateful for what you've done. So before we go into our final wrap up, I'd like to open up the floor to any parting comments from you, questions, comments, those kinds of things. We could take a few minutes at least to do that.
It's Sandra. Dr. K.
Hey, Sandra.
I just want to say that I'm getting an echo. I don't know why. But I learned so much from everybody's presentation. And the guest speakers were phenomenal. And I really love the way you taught this class. I really do. I mean, it was not that the work was so easy, but your teaching style. No, the work is not easy. I can tell you that. But it's your teaching style. Very supportive, very so much behind people. I loved it. I mean, I love this class. My kids call me a nerd, but I just absolutely loved all of this. And I love meeting up with my people that I've been in these classes with already. I love that too. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, I really do appreciate that. You know, I learn as much every time I do one of these courses as you do. Probably more. I learn from y'all because, you know, let's face it, out in the real world, you're the experts, right? You're the folks that are doing the work, facing the challenges, having to turn the wrenches, so to speak, every day. And do remember this: long after the classrooms are done and the books are closed and diplomas are handed out to y'all, maintain those contacts with one another, maintain those networks. That becomes critically important, especially in our field, especially if you're talking any area of human resource development or human capital development. We are our own best friends as long as we maintain those contacts. So please remember that moving forward, not only during your coursework, during your dissertation journey, but beyond. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, if there are no further add-ins here, because I do have a couple of short wrap-up items that I need to discuss, housekeeping things, so to speak. It's my favorite picture in the whole world. Okay, not that anybody cares, right? Okay, so here we go. I will make announcements in Canvas as soon as any grading actually is complete and those grades are posted, but especially when all the final information is input so that you can take a look at it. I'm going to remind you to please take a look at your course or to complete your course evaluations, course feedback. I get better by what you do and what you say in those things. So do me a favor and take a little time with those. And then final grades, I will have those because it's my deadline. It's something the university has me do. Will be in sort on Monday, May 10th. That's why I'm going to refer you to Canvas, to go ahead and check those things that you need to check. I'm also going to say that if you have any pieces, pieces of assignments and things like that, I think you know who you are. Get them in as soon as you can. If you're running or have run into difficulties that we haven't already talked about, please get with me. Hopefully by the end of the week, so we can talk. I'd like to get these things graded and complete as soon as possible, but I understand that during this very trying time, as they say, during these unprecedented times, a lot of it's become cliche, hasn't it? With the COVID, that life overtakes us, right? So it's okay. I just need to know about it because I want to see you all be successful. I'll leave it at that. I won't go on about it. So yeah, I'm like that guy on what was that show with the family? No, I can't remember. Anyway, doesn't matter. So Modern Family, that's right, where they started doing the interviews on screen, that kind of thing. The other thing I'd like you to do is maintain contact with me. If you're in a future class with me, great. I'm really looking forward to working with you again. None of you will be in this next class that I'm teaching, but in the fall, I imagine I'll have at least some of you, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So, having said all that, there you go. And my references, 1, 2, 3. And I want you to all know I cited every single one of these in my wrap up tonight. So I'm very proud of this. Okay, so you got to work with me on that. Keep applying those skills that you've developed during the course. Not only the APA and the writing and all of those things, but the thinking, the way you work through your content, the research that you do, how you conduct it, and how you communicate it are all very important as you move on as scholar practitioners. If you haven't had Foundations of Human Capital Development, and you have that course with me, I'm looking forward to it. We'll talk a lot about it, and certainly looking forward to that. So with no further delay, unless you have anything for me, I would bid each and every one of you a wonderful evening, and good night.
And I think what people imagine it to be, it's really liberating.
Thank you, Dr.
Kimberly.
Thank you, Dr. K.
Thank you, Dr. K.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night, everybody.
Great class, guys. Thank you.
Yes, I enjoyed it.
Good job. Stay in touch.
Yes, sir.
We will.